Hello everybody and welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabriella. If you don't know me, if you haven't seen my channel, I work as a freelance model and photographer in the Metro Detroit area. And today I want to cover something that I think a lot of people are more than capable of doing, but don't know that they're capable of doing. We've all heard of dodge and burning in Photoshop. It's used commonly, probably the most, with like beauty retouching and retouching skin and all of that. But another great way to use the dodge and burn technique is to actually use it to create directional lighting in your photos. If you ever shoot a portrait session or any session really outside an overcast light, you don't really have a lot of directional lighting. It is actually a lot nicer to shoot in that type of weather because it is overcast. It's all kind of naturally diffused light. But if you do want a little bit more direction in your lighting or to be a little bit more dramatic, that is going to be something that you'll have to add in Photoshop later. I did just recently do a shoot for a company called Secret Slayer. They specialize in weaponry for women, I guess is the best way to put it, or self-defense weapons for women. So the photo I'll be working on today is going to be a photo that I shot for Secret Slayer at my favorite studio ever, Detroit proper. Check it out if you haven't. If you're ever in the Detroit area, or if you're already always in the Detroit area, this is a great studio to check out. They rent props. They have all the lighting capabilities that you really could ever need. And Michelle and Jenna, who are the lovely ladies who run it, they are phenomenal. They're willing to help. They're always down to answer your questions, etc., etc. So make sure to check them out. I just realized the volume's probably pretty low because I was talking so low the whole time. As you can see, I put a little bit more effort into trying to light this video a little bit nicer than the last one. I got dressed today, so you know that's a big step in the right direction. And I did get a new microphone, which I just realized I'm not recording the audio for this intro part on the mic. But hopefully it'll be better as I go through the tutorial with you guys. So let's just get right started and get going through it because it should be pretty quick. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open our file in Photoshop. I did link the raw file to this photo below so you guys can follow along if you wanted to. With my photo, feel free to use it. Just don't say it's your own. But it is going to be a great learning tool if you want to follow along with me while I do this. So typically this file that says layer 1 over here, when you open it in Photoshop, it's going to say background and it's going to have a little lock on the right. All you'll have to do is double click and press OK, and that will just make yours look just like mine. So now that we're here, I'm going to copy this layer and make a new one. This is called non-destructive editing. This is really, really important, especially for new editors in Photoshop. You really want to focus on not destructing your original image, so that way once you're editing and if you decide you either over edited or you don't like it or you want to go back, you haven't lost any data. It's easy to go back without having to start over from the beginning because you had to reopen the raw file because you edited right on the original file. So I'm going to copy this image by hitting Command or Control J. And now I have my second layer that I'm going to edit on. I don't really need to do this, but sometimes I'll go in and if I wanted to change anything in here, if I wanted to get rid of some of these scratches or whatever I would want to do, I would go in on this layer and make those adjustments so that way if I wanted to see, okay, what's the difference between what it looks like now and what it looked like before, I can kind of see it there. And it's just easy to go back if I decide, hey, I made mistakes. So the next thing that we're going to do here is I'm actually going to make a curves layer. When you work with curves, it's just like dodge and burn, like I mentioned earlier. We're going to take a curves layer and we're going to make it darker. And we're going to make another curves layer that's going to make it brighter. There are two ways to do this. I think this way is the easiest. If you want to go the long way, you can go to image up at the top, go to adjustments, and then you have everything here as well. However, what that is going to do is adjust the actual image, and I don't want to do that. So if I do this way, where's my curves in here? Okay. If I do it this way, and I bring the curves down, I've just adjusted the entire layer. That actually looks pretty good and will help us with our directional lighting, but that's not typically the goal. So I'm going to undo that here, and I'm going to go down to this little like yin-yang looking symbol at the bottom of our layers panel. This is going to be our adjustment layers. So instead of applying the curves to the actual layer or to this photo itself, we're going to create a layer on top of the photo with the curve adjustments, if that makes sense. So if we go down here, we're going to go to curves, and I'm just going to take a middle point here and drag it way down. I kind of like how that looks, but for the sake of the exercise, we're just going to continue as if I didn't like how it looked and it was way, way, way too dark. So when you're dodge and burning, you have dodging, which is making something brighter, and burning, which is making something darker. I like to think of it, if you have a hard time remembering burning, if I think of a campfire, when it's burning, it kind of makes like stuff black and darker. That's how I remember it. I don't know if that's helpful or if it's hard to remember it all, but whatever. So back to it, I'm going to name this one our burn layer. I do recommend if you are newer, or even if you're not newer in Photoshop and you're gonna have a lot of layers, I do recommend naming them. It's a really quick step. You literally just double click and type the name that you want. And it helps keep your document organized. As many I'm sure, are a victim of like having 45 layers and none of them are labeled, and I'm like trying to figure out what goes where. So if you can, just try to label them along the way, and that's gonna be super helpful. So the next thing we're gonna do, right now we're on our actual curves layer, and we're in our actual curves here on the left. So we see that we have the curves adjustment on the left and we have a layer mask on the right. So what we're going to do is that we're going to invert this layer mask. How I do that is I just click Command or Control I. Oh, I just knocked down the microphone. So just hit Command or Control I and you will have that inverted. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to our brush tool. So my brush tool is over on my toolbar here on the left. If you don't see it and you see one of these other symbols, just right click in the corner and that little corner bottom right, and it will come up with all the other brush options. So go to brush tool. Another easy way to do this, and it's a lot easier, is just to click the B button on your keyboard. When you're using a layer mask, it's actually taking away, it's like erasing or adding the photo or the curves that you're trying to. So a mask isn't something that you can draw on top of with any color that you want. It is going to be something that you can use to reveal the curves layer like we're going to do right now, or hide it if we want to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush tool, I'm going to go up here, I'm going to make sure that I have a nice soft brush. And I use a Wacom tablet and I use a pen. So I am going to make sure that the pressure sensitivity is on. And if you don't have a pen, or if you have a trackpad or a mouse, that's totally fine. The pressure sensitivity, however, is not going to make a difference. So you're going to want to make sure that you probably bring your opacity down a little bit along with your flow. If you're using a pen tablet like I am, just make sure that your pressure sensitivity is turned on. And then we're going to want to bring the flow way lower than you might think. I'm going to start with it at like 8, and I'm just going to start kind of coloring it in where I think I would want the shadows. So for this example, I want the light coming in from the left and kind of falling off on the right. So to start, I'm just going to kind of start coloring in here. And you can kind of see already that this has created depth. This has created some depth in this image that didn't exist before. So right now, and that was obviously very fast, but right now if we go back, we went from it sitting on a flat image to actually being in a space that could believably be floating. These were floating in the actual space. They were connected to some arms here, but I want to make sure that they really look like they're floating for the client. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to add a little bit more darkness here. Okay, so now that we have that done, that was super fast and super easy. I didn't time lapse anything for the most part. Now we definitely look like we have a light coming in from the left and it's kind of falling off to the right. The next thing we're going to do is that we're going to make another curves layer. We're going to do the opposite of what we did with the last one. Instead of bringing a middle point down, we're going to bring it upward. And this is just going to create more highlights for us if we want to add them in later. So again, we're going to stay on this layer mask, make sure you're there, Command or Control I to invert the layer, and now I can paint in where I want a little bit more light, or it to be a little bit brighter. So I'm actually going to bring my flow down a little bit more, and I'm just going to kind of paint over and mellow out the median between where I darkened and where it's light, so that way it's a little bit more believable. And another thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to zoom in here. I didn't do like an amazing job on this draft of getting all the red out of the silver. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my flow up a little bit, just to like 6 or 7. And I'm just going to add a little brightness along this stick here, or this cap to the knife, and on the natural highlight that is here, just to create a little bit more dimension on this object. And I'm going to do the same to the knife part itself. This adds a nice little glow to the object as well that makes it stand out from the background a little bit. As you can see, I'm doing this like super fast, so I'm not actually paying attention and getting really close. If I was doing this for, like when I did it for the client, I would not leave all of this red here erased. I would go back in and make sure that it was nice and tidied up there. But for the sake of this exercise, I don't need to show you guys my teeny tiny little brush strokes. So already we have a more interesting photo. Again, what I'm going to do, I'm just going to keep making whatever curves layer I think need to exist in order to get the look that I want. So like I said earlier, I did like that kind of like darker look, and so I do want to add that back in. And then I'm going to add another highlights layer or another curves layer to bring up the highlights. So I'm going to dodge them here. As you can see, I'm being hypocritical already in the corner. I'm not labeling anything. I'm just so used to working with these. This one I would name Dodge 2. This one would be Dodge 1. This one would be Burn 2. If I was labeling them the whole time like I suggested you should. Hypocritical. All right, so I'm just gonna go in again with my brush tool on white because we want it to be the opposite of what our layer mask is, which is black. And I'm gonna paint in a little more light right here just to make it a little more dazzling. And let's say that I wanted to add a little bit more shadow here, because I do. Instead of going back in my history or pressing Command or Control Z and undoing everything I just did, you can just change your brush color to black by pressing X, or you can just go down here and press these arrows and switch them. And the black will add in those shadows again. Because we're painting on our layer mask, what that's actually doing is that it's hiding that layer from what we're seeing. It's actually masking, painting it black, that curves layer, which is brightening things up. So if I turn that off, you can see all the things that are painted white in here get a little bit brighter, but everything that's black stays the same. So now if we go back down to our original photo here, and we press Option and click it, we went from this super flat image to a pretty dynamically lit photo in a pretty fast way. So if you know how to dodge and burn, that is going to be a super easy way for you to kind of fake that directional lighting and fake a little bit more dynamic lighting, especially in situations where you don't have the option of bringing lights, or you were shooting outside and you can't control the weather. One last thing that I would do, and this is just more so to kind of make it look floaty, I would add a little shadow down here just to make sure it looks like the light is hitting this way, and would just leave a little shadow. And all I'm gonna do again, you guessed it, is add a curves layer. And if I'm not being a hypocrite, I'll do that. I really like how dark that is. I'm going to invert the layer mask again, make sure my brush is on white, and I'm just gonna bring this up a little bit. And for the sake of being kind of fast, I'm just gonna draw a little shadow in. And it doesn't have to be anything extravagant, but even just that alone gives it a little bit more depth that it didn't have before. Let's look at our beginning and our original photo one more time. And let's look at our end photo. And that can all be done in like 10 to 15 minutes, and that instantly took this photo from what could be and look kind of amateur to a professional looking, dynamically lit. It looks like somebody that knows how to work with light and knows how to use objects with light. All right, thank you so much for watching this tutorial. If it did help you out, let me know. Please tag me in your photos. My Instagram I will pop right here, and let me know what you think. If you have any more questions, let me know. And it's definitely something that has helped me enhance my photography and enhance my shots. Just adding a little bit more dynamic range to my photos has made the world of difference, at least for stuff like this, especially product photography. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you out. If you have any questions on how I did this, why I did this, how you can do it, and I didn't go over something more in depth, feel free to leave me a comment. If you liked this video or didn't, go ahead and press that like or dislike button, and why not smash that subscribe button, because eventually I would love to be able to monetize on YouTube. Enjoy some of these other photos that I shot for Secret Slayer, and I will see you in the next one.